wallpaper, but they're numbered so you know which one to do, and they've got like a little bit of overlap, so you can line it up. But I didn't get the overlap quite right, and you can see it, but with all the shelves, you can't see it anymore. So yeah, if you're gonna have front stuff in front of it, doesn't matter. But they had all kinds of cool backgrounds. White brick, like you could do a solid white brick, but I actually it's actually supposed to be the other way. I flipped the whole series,
flipped it upside down
and backwards. So I actually started one at the bottom, went that way. So
that is too cool.
Yeah, it turned out nice, and it's supposed to be able to should be able to just take it off. It's not wall.
Yeah, that's what's cool to me is that you can put it on your wall. And
although one review said they took it off their apartment wall and it, apartment paint. Who knows? That's cheap.
That's probably that cheap paint they were using.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
So. All right.
Okay.
Well, you're back. I thought you'd be on the road still.
No, we finished a meeting in Charleston yesterday around 4.
Cool.
And I was like, I'm just going to drive on back.
It's
like 6 hours from Charleston.
Yeah, it's not a bad drive. It's an interesting drive going through the mountains and Asheville and all that.
Yep.
It's easy. It's not like you're going across I-20 south, down.
No. And most south. Of it, you don't hit the mountains until the last like 2 hours. So
it's pretty easy. Mostly, we used to drive when my mom lived in Charleston. We'd drive down there. When she got sick, I was down there all the time. But it's a pretty easy drive.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it was a good meeting. I'll tell you about it. It's a really cool company. A lot of growth opportunity, small team, and they're just in the middle of really some explosive. I feel like it's they're kind of a startup that even though they've been around for 15 years, just in the last 6 or 7 years, they've really hit their, they've really hit it. In terms of growth.
That's what it takes. That's what it takes a lot of times. It's good 7 to 10 years to really find your footing in the market, especially stuff with long sales cycles like that. So yeah. All right, well, let's roll. We got some good stuff to talk about today. Got some. I've got some stuff. We'll tease, and then you can start it, and then we'll tease it.
Yeah. So I figured we were going off of the stuff you sent me. So I spent some time reading that. So it's going to be good.
Yeah, I've got like 4 things we could talk about, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
All right. Sounds good. All right, here we go. Let's cue things up. We'll go 3, 2, and 1. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool in my brand new studio.
I love it. Look at that.
Yeah.
If you're listening to the podcast, if you're not watching, Sean's got a totally new background setting with the brick.
Yeah.
You need to check out the video. You need to go over to our website, check out the video, because that is pretty slick.
Yeah, same book, same sign, but I put new bricks behind it, new bookshelves, and these bookshelves hold a lot more. So it's not like double rows deep like we have a lot of our bookshelves, Jonathan.
Yep.
So
yeah.
You run out of room on the shelf. You got to start stacking between the shelves and everything else. So, but it'll be stacked again pretty soon, I'm sure. The rate we're going with books and stuff. But yeah, it was a fun project, and I feel smarter and wiser, and feel like I could charge more money now for calls and stuff on client calls. I feel like I charged a good 20-30% higher since they're looking at that backdrop.
Yeah, it's cool. I love it. So I want you to mention a couple of these where your source on the wall mural, because it looks you're looking at it on the screen. It looks like real brick.
Yeah. So
but this is cool stuff. But before you mention that, I want to tease people so they don't think we're just doing so they don't run off thinking we're just doing product. Product reviews.
No. So we're going to talk about today. We're going to be careful with some of these words so we don't get.
So we might get banned on YouTube.
Yeah, we don't get the old boot, but. So we're going to talk about the law that kind of changed America back in 2013. I think I was kind of shocked when I saw this. It it kind of silently happened, but
Yeah.
we're starting to see the effects of it more and more.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about a three-pronged approach to, shall we say, convince people
Manipulate,
to,
convince.
I was trying to not use those kind of words, but to
Yes,
convince
we got to be
people of
careful
what you,
the words we choose.
yeah. So we'll be talking about some.
We'll get into a little history, talking about the Hegelian dialectic.
Yeah. So you're just giving the names. I'm just trying to tease it.
You're just okay. All right. So
we'll talk about what ancient ships did back in the ancient Navy days to trick their opponents, and then we'll talk about our normal response to fear, and then how we maybe can buffer that a little bit. So
absolutely.
So those are just some of the things, and I know you've got some stuff. But yeah, we'll be diving deep into that whole world of what do we call it? Propaganda. I'm just going to
propaganda, fear, manipulation.
We've said that before on the show, and it hadn't gotten us in trouble. So
not yet.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about propaganda, fear, techniques for propaganda, because you need to be aware of this stuff. Because if you're not, it's easy to, because the stuff works. That's what's crazy about it. It's like,
well, just look around us today. It's obvious.
It doesn't matter how smart you are. If you're not paying attention and you're kind of half walking, you're gonna miss it. It's gonna happen. And even if you are paying attention, it's so effective.
It is.
But it can still work.
Yeah, I've caught myself, just reading through some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about. I've actually had to kind of self-reflect and see where it happens to us all. It's easy to fall prey to this type of manipulation.
Yeah, and let me be clear. This is not one side or the other. Everybody who listens to this show on a regular basis knows what side we're on.
Yeah.
But the fact is both sides are being played in one way or another.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's just the fact. So, and against each other probably more than anything, which means you're being played.
That's right.
If you're really upset with the other side, you fall.
You're being played by both. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's not a side. It's not about the side. It's just it's like 2-card Monty kind of,
Yeah. So well, let's get into the beverages, or do you want to? I'll mention a couple of these things. So everything in my background, it's kind of a self-adhesive wallpaper. It comes in like this. I think the overall mural size is 100 by 144.
Yeah.
So it's 12 feet wide and 100 inches tall, which is going to be about a 9-foot ceiling for most people.
You can just peel it off. Put it on the wall.
You just start at the top and you peel the backing off, and as you peel the backing off, you kind of just smooth it out. And you got to line them up. They're numbered, but I think it's called Wall 26 on is the product brand. And there's all kinds, not just brick. They have all kinds of cool backgrounds. They even have like some big giant pictures that you can get, things like that. And then the bookshelves, I'll have to get a link for them after the show, but the bookshelves were very reasonable, like $159 on Amazon too, each. So
really cool. Really
kind of industrial
looking.
Very industrial looking.
Like it.
So it's class to join up a little bit. So, and then I'm playing with a new, and none of these are sponsors, but it's kind of cool tools if you're online a lot, if you're doing videos. I found this thing called eyeglasses, which for your iMac, it allows. So this is the normal pan. If you're on the video watching, it shows some of my sidewalls, which I really didn't like. So I found this, instead of getting a new camera, I found this app that you use for your your Mac, and it allows you to zoom in.
Pretty cool.
As much as you want. So if you want to get a tight headshot, if you're on an interview, you could do that, or you can just kind of pull it back a little bit. And then it's got all kinds of cool,
that's awesome,
fun filters and things like that.
I want that. I want you to send the link to that.
Like I can do thermal cam, X-ray cam.
That's right. That's right.
So if you're on a really controversial show and you don't want to be seen, you could use like the thermal cam. Comic book. If I'm on Ben Settle's show one day, I can use the comic book.
That's cool. Yeah,
right?
I like that.
So yeah, it's kind of your own little studio right there. An
app? Is it an app or is it software? That means
it's actually an app and
for
the
Mac.
Yeah,
okay,
it's called Eyeglasses.
Okay.
They have some. They're actually, once you get on there, you'll recognize some of the other apps they have. It's like some of the camcorder stuff and recorders and things like that. So
yeah, cool. That's awesome.
All right, well, let's.
I got one thing I'm gonna mention.
Oh,
yeah. So since we're doing some product things, I've got a new mic here, and it's not the one that I'm on, but this is a cool little mic. So I'm doing a trade show event next week out in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm going to be out there for my podcast, and I needed a couple of extra mics to purchase for that event. It's like, because I typically use this one, and I needed a couple of new mics. This is I found these. I looked at a review, so I'm going to actually let you listen to how they sound on this podcast. I'm going to flip over, but this is called a Rode Pod Mic, dynamic podcast microphone. $99. I couldn't believe it.
Really?
On
on Amazon. Like, compare that to let people know before you switch. Like the one you're using now is what?
The one I'm using now is this is a Electro Voice RE20 microphone.
Okay.
This is like a $500 mic.
Yeah.
Right. Or a $500 mic. So as opposed to this one. So I'm going to let you hear the difference. Because I was really impressed. I tested it out myself, but I haven't tested it on the Rodecaster right here. I tested it out on kind of a different setup. So
right.
All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to mute this one out. And
okay, you're muted.
All right. So I'm muted on this one. Now you can hear me on the little podcast, the Rode podcast. What is it called? The Rode, the Rode Pod Mic. The Rode Pod Mic. So this is a dynamic microphone. It's not a plug-in. It's not a USB. But I haven't been able to tell the difference between these two. They both sound really
The overall sound is the same. I do hear a little bit more background, but that's also because you've got that mounted on the table instead of on a boom.
Exactly.
Probably.
Yep.
So if you put it on a boom, it's probably going to sound almost identical.
Yep. Because there's probably some vibration there.
Yeah. You keep hitting the stand too, so that helps.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does. I think you have to be a little bit more directly in front of it, maybe.
Yep. Yeah, I think you have to be like, there we go.
Yeah, like
I'm right on top of it now.
Yeah.
I can smell the steel or whatever. So, but yeah, to me, it sounds great for a lot less than what I would spend on a really high performance mic. I mean, pretty cool.
And also, I mean, if you put a pop screen or a wind thing on that, it's going to sound probably even better too.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. But mainly I got those. I bought a couple of those for guests out there to do.
So for those listening, you just switch back, right?
Yeah, I just switched back.
You can't tell the difference.
No, exactly. So there's a cool little recommendation. We'll put that in our
show notes.
For people that are interested, that are doing some podcasting, getting ready. I've got both of these hooked into the Rodecaster Pro. Man, they sound great. So
yeah, very nice.
All right. So we got some drinks, and then we'll get right into our topic. I'm not going to be long on my drink because I've had it before.
Okay.
And I think I gave it a good rating before. So,
well, I'm super excited about mine. So you want to go first and just get it out of the way, and
Yep. So I have it's been a long time since I've had this one. It is a Saint Vrain triple.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I've had this one before. It's they're out of Colorado. Usually tranquil. The St. Vrain River flows out of the Rocky Mountains. So, trying to think here. I'll just hit the high notes. Named after the river that brought our hometown's great flood in 2013. So St. Vrain is designed to pay homage to the classic Belgian triples while adding a uniquely local twist. 9.3% ABV and only 18 IBUs. So it's not a triple IP. It's just a triple ale. It's not an IPA. So It's actually a Pilsner. So I think I gave it a really good rating last time. I can't remember what, because I stopped putting I need to go back and put describe the beers on our podcast episodes, but I stopped doing that. So I think I had it and I didn't list it. So I'm pretty sure I've had this one.
Cool.
What do you got?
All right. So I knew you were on a road trip this week. I'm going to be on a road trip next week. Yep. So when I saw this one at the store from Panther Island Brewing out of Fort Worth, Texas, I grabbed it. It's called Road Trip Snacks.
Oh, wow.
So, but here's the subtitle.
Road Trip Snacks.
Here's the subtitle. It's my favorite part. It's an ale brewed with
snacks.
Beaver nuggets.
Oh, look at that.
It is.
Wait, now hold those up again. Are those like Cheetos or something?
So this is, you don't know. Hold on. All right. So this is the Road Trip Snacks ale brewed with beaver nuggets. So what are beaver nuggets would be the question that most people would have if you're not from Texas.
Considering I've been to Buc-ee's quite a few times and I've never seen beaver nuggets.
I don't know how you've not seen these because they're literally all over the store and at the checkout. But you're probably just spending for your life. No, they're like caramel corn, like the old caramel popcorn kind of thing. So it's like puffed corn with caramel on it, but they're called beaver nuggets and they are absolutely addictive and delicious. Perfect road trip snack. So when I saw that, I had Sydney, she goes by a Buc-ee's on the weekend. So I had her pick up Tamara had her pick up some beaver nuggets.
Oh my goodness.
So I can have those along with the beer and now I have no idea how they brew this with the beer. Like, I'm not sure how that works. They probably put one in there so they can use that for marketing.
Is this close to the counter with all the barbecue and stuff, or
it's usually
they have the candied nuts and all that stuff, sitting around those that middle.
Yeah. It's at one of the end caps, usually near the checkout. But you guys are getting quite a few Buc-ee's around here now. I mean,
there's a couple down in there's a couple now in North Georgia, and then we're getting one over in Sevierville. So
which is supposed to, the one in Sevierville is supposed to be the biggest in the country, which I can't even.
Imagine. Wow, I can't imagine that.
What that must look like. Well, I'll tell you this: it has a head on it. And that was not a bad pour. Okay. That was like a regular pour.
Wow.
Like it just went crazy on me.
Did you drop some of those nuggets in that?
No, I guess they're already in there and just, holy crap. Like that's going to take me the whole show just to get the.
Yeah, you may have to wait a little bit.
I'll drink it out of the can for the taste test.
All right.
It is a road trip, so you just drink it out of the can, right?
That's typically the way it goes.
All right. And it's just,
by the way, in case we go long, I got a backup.
Okay.
I got some tin cup.
Uh-oh.
Some tin cup.
That's a strong backup right
American whiskey. Have you ever had this?
I have not. I've seen it several times and thought about it. Is it good?
Have you had it? It comes with its own tin cup.
I love that. I love anything that comes with its own cup.
Sean would love this because you like stuff like this. But it comes with its own tin cup. So I might give you, if we get into that, depending on how long we go, I might tap into that. If not, I will share it on next week's episode.
So this is just an ale it's 5%. It's basically a lager. I mean, let's be real.
All right.
So,
okay.
So, cheers.
Cheers.
All right.
Just like I remember. Like I don't remember.
So I will say that tastes exactly like I don't know, Keystone Light or something, not good. But it does. You can taste the beaver nuggets at the finish.
Oh, you can?
You can taste just a little hint of beaver nugget at the finish.
Wow.
But the beer itself is not good. It's very lagery, traditional lager type stuff. So not a fan. I love the name, love the concept. Hey, and it got me a bag of beaver nuggets. So
that's like a package deal. It comes with.
No, it didn't come with it. I had to get that separate. But
I thought maybe it was some special.
That would be good co-marketing though. For sure.
Yeah,
Taco Bell would be proud if you did that. So All right, so I'm going to give this a 2.
Okay.
My lowest score in a while. So
that's pretty bad, man.
Yeah, it's not great.
Must be pretty bad. The beaver nuggets did not help.
I don't know. Can you like
the foam, the head did not help it either.
Yeah, if you look like down in the top,
that looks like real foam.
Just looks like sea foam, doesn't it?
Yeah,
like washed up on the beach. Yeah, it's not great. So anyway, all right, our listeners are probably getting impatient. We went really long on that segment.
I'll go. What I don't even remember, but I'll go a. That's worthy of a 4-2.
All right, very good.
All right.
All right. Well, let's jump into the controversy here. So, first thing I want to talk about. So, let me set the context.
Talk about the 3. Okay. No, you.
Let me set the context real quick. So I was just looking through some stuff, and I'm on somebody's list. I'm not gonna name names because he really doesn't want to like share this document too much, especially on social media.
Wonder why?
Yeah. But he's done this very exhaustive report, done a lot of research, lots of links, lots of outbound links to different videos and different things, a lot of which keep getting taken down. But he does a lot of other research in it as well. And that's kind of some of the stuff we're going to talk about. So I was on his list for something else, and then he sent this out because I think a lot of people with platforms right now are using their platforms to discuss some of this stuff. And for good reason. I think there's, probably 2 years ago would have said that's not what you should use your platform for if that's not what you build it for. But I think I've changed my mind.
Yeah, right.
Like I think I get it now.
And
I was a little hesitant, which we'll talk about that too. But
I'm curious to hear about this this law back in 2013. You really caught my curiosity. So I don't know if that's going to.
Yeah. So that's. So in this report, he goes through kind of like some background on just propaganda itself and how it works. And then he gets into the current situation we've been experiencing. And then he gets into, bigger and kind of the future. And then finally, it does end with some action points and things like that, which I think is great. Because one problem I have with a lot of the conversation going on right now is there's not many solutions. It's a lot of talk about what's wrong, but there's not a lot of solutions.
Sure.
So I did like that at the end of this report, he gave some solutions, which we can touch on if people are interested.
Sure.
But the law that really caught my attention when I was going through this was before July 2nd, 2013, propaganda by the U.S. government was not legal. Sounds like that's probably a pretty good thing, right? But on July 2nd, 2013, a bill was passed and propaganda became legal in the U.S. for the U.S. government to start publishing propaganda on different networks. Some of them are here locally, some of them are overseas. So, but I thought that was kind of a little bit startling. I don't know why, but it kind of caught my attention. Apparently, I guess I'm naive or something, but like apparently most other countries have propaganda machines. So I guess we felt left out and decided to go ahead and make it legal for us as well. So, so back in 2013, if you want to add some flavor to your conspiracy punch, you could say that's also about the time Facebook went public, but those probably aren't connected.
Right.
No way those are connected.
Yeah. It's interesting tie-in,
because I think Facebook went public in 2012. So
that's true. It's true.
So that was the one thing that now, for the last 8 years, basically, propaganda has been legal in the U.S.
Yeah.
So that was a big shift. It's kind of like when drug companies, like if you think back, Jonathan, to us growing up watching TV, there were no drug commercials on TV.
No, none.
And it wasn't until, I can't remember when it was, but I think it was like the early 2000s, maybe late 90s, that drug companies got the go ahead to advertise on TV the way we see. And now they're every other commercial. If you're watching, most channels that have commercials, it's probably a drug commercial.
Yeah.
So That was, and I think that's another huge shift in this country that has caused a lot of problems as well.
And they all do an amazing job of,
well, they work
talking, describing nothing or visual. You don't see any visuals associated with the drug whatsoever.
No, it's all
nothing whatsoever.
Yeah, it's all this weird. It is weird. Like the video and the text does not go together at all. Mm-mm. The audio and the video, it's totally different.
Yeah.
And I've always got weird little characters or, what happy families and all this kind of stuff. But
sure.
That's, but what's crazy is it worked. Mm-hmm. And it's just more proof of like what we're about to talk about.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing. That's kind of the background for a lot of this, is that now propaganda is legal for the past 8 years, and they've been getting better and better at it.
Absolutely.
Obviously, you practice more, you get better at it. So what are the principles they're using? Is kind of the next thing to talk about. And the one that really stuck out to me, you mentioned it earlier, is I don't even know how to say this, the Hegelian Dialectic.
I thought it was Hegelian. After
Hegelian.
Hegel.
Yeah. Okay.
It could be.
Yeah. Hard G sounds German, right? So it's probably hard
Hegelian. Hegelian.
Dialectic. So the idea here is, and here's what's scary about a lot of this stuff, is a lot of this stuff is what we use as marketers.
Yeah.
Or a variation of it, right? So you can kind of see that, it really does work, because we have used a variation of it ourselves in marketing. I mean, what I'm about to share with you, there's 3 points basically to this dialectic. The first thing you do is you create a problem.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Right? Yeah. You got to start with a problem.
Yeah. Which, if you think about the classic copywriting techniques, right? It's problem is the first thing you do.
Right.
So I don't know which came first, PAS or this dialect. I didn't get into the history of this too deep. But the first thing you do is you create a problem. Mm-hmm. So you create a problem. It doesn't have to be a real problem. You just need to create a problem.
Create it. Right.
Right. And then what you're going to do is you're going to watch the reaction that the problem creates.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is the key part. And we say the same thing a lot of times in marketing. The third part is you want to provide their solution to it. Like, you want to watch what the people are clamoring for based on this problem and give them a variation or so of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to do an example that was not related to what we've all been experiencing the last 18 months. Okay. So I went and looked for a different type of example. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. If I can find the StreamYard again. So share. All right. So you seeing that?
Yep.
All right. So let's talk about the centralization of power through monopoly on currency. If that was the agenda of the powers that be, right, then what would happen, right? So the problem would be, well, the Federal Reserve is unbacked. It's an intangible currency. So you'd let them float that. You'd float that out there. Like, this is a problem, right? So that sounds like it might come from people who, are against the Federal Reserve, right? And we'll come back to that. So the people are going to be like, well, we need a gold standard. We need honest money. We don't need this money printing stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what would happen is, then the solution that would be offered, in quote, solution, is digital gold, or we could even say gold ETF.
Yeah.
Right. Which is very popular right now.
Mm-hmm.
Is basically fraudulent gold backed by a digital currency owned by the same guys that caused the problem.
Yeah.
Right. And if you think about, I think this is a good example, because if you look at, money printing and stocks and things like that, people were saying for a long time that, they're just printing money. Mm-hmm. Stocks are corrupt. You got to have gold. So what do? They're like, okay, we'll create digital gold.
Yeah. Right.
Which goes like a gold ETF goes totally against what gold stands for. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, for the most part. And true gold bugs aren't going to buy an ETF. They're going to buy actual gold.
Yeah. Because the whole point is something hard, tangible that has
Yeah, that you can stick in a sock
has
drawer.
intrinsic or has specific value. Yeah.
Yeah. An ETF can go to zero.
Yeah.
Gold, theoretically won't go to zero. But who's to
It can be
say?
used for, I mean,
Who's to say
obviously
that
the value of gold, there's a reason why it's valuable. It can be used, I mean, as for a number of things. I mean, it's
theoretically?
yeah.
Like Tamara and I were having this talk because we were talking like, okay, what do you need for like your basic survival stuff, right? Obviously, you need food, water, things like that. But what will currency be? Will it be gold and silver? I don't think so. I really don't. I think there'll be some smart shopkeepers and things like that will probably take it. But I think the average person will be like, "What am I supposed to do with this?"
Yeah.
Like,
right?
Do you remember the movie, The Book of Eli?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And
I saw that recently again a few weeks ago.
And you remember what currency was there? I mean, water was one.
Yeah.
But it was wet wipes, like Kentucky. Remember the Kentucky Fried Chicken wet naps?
Oh yeah.
That's what he paid for stuff with, and like some electronics and some others, like just totally random stuff.
Yeah.
And I think if it ever got that bad, I think that is more likely to be that kind of stuff that is going to be valuable even than gold. Yeah. Now, I think long term, gold and silver will always have its value. But in a state of crisis, will gold and silver? I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. Who knows? I mean, it's all about
what people need. Like, do they need a store of value or do they need to survive?
Right. You don't think oxygen is very important until you don't have it, right? I mean, it's it's what's important at the time. So
so if food and water are the most important things, that's going to become the currency.
Sure. Exactly.
Yeah. And if most people don't have anything to give in return for the gold, then gold's not going to be worth that much.
Right.
So that's a little bit of a side tangent, but I guess all tangents are on the side. But so that's an example of like creating a problem. And then you watch the reaction and you sort of give people what they want, but it's basically you had the end game in mind already.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Of course.
Right. So that's the thing I wanted to come back to is like you're pushing people towards a solution you already have engineered, but you want them to kind of think it's their idea.
Yep.
And we do this in marketing all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's used for the financial crisis. I mean, you think about back to the Great Recession. I mean, now it's on inflation. Inflation is the big problem. And how do you deal with that? So, I mean, those are issues in the news. You hear about inflation, and you typically hear about that from people that are on the right side. On the left side, you hear about climate change, right? That's their problem. And obviously the pandemic. I mean, we can get into that, but let's use some things outside of the most obvious, which we're living in this crazy time of pandemics.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what this report is mostly on, but you could apply this to so many things we're seeing right now. Right. Climate change, everything's applied to, you see, obviously you create a problem, climate change, and it used to be global warming, right?
Yeah.
And
until things got cold a couple winters in a row and people were like, oh, that was a bad term. We need a new term.
That's right.
That was
so climate change term. And suddenly climate change is not global warming. Used to be the temperature's getting warmer, which is going to melt the ice caps. Now it's a climate change. The terminology drifted. You see how the problem evolves to a different terminology. Because it used to be, if you lived during the 70s, there was actually a fear of global cooling, right? I mean, it was just we were going to have this going through this global cooling stage.
The fear then also was the oil crisis.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And in the 40s and 50s, it was the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
In
right.
60s, it was McCarthyism or whenever that was. Was that 60s or was that?
That was in the late 60s. McCarthyism. Yeah. So communists were everywhere inside the government. And so, so that was the fear and that was the problem.
Right. So there's always a problem. The question is, and this is where it can really start to sound like conspiracy theory and everything else, is like, who's originating the problem? Like, where's the problem really coming from?
Right.
And then if you pull back, are you able to see kind of the end game? And that's the piece that I've been missing personally. I'm like, what is the end game if a lot of these conspiracy ideas are true?
Yeah.
Like, what would the end game be? And that was really hard for me to wrap my head around. And this is a point I really wanted to cover. I know this is a little bit off topic for what we usually talk about, but I think it's important.
It's important to recognize in the sphere of influence and persuasion.
Absolutely.
Because it's being done on us all the time.
Absolutely. So, but here's what I realized after I read this report. Maybe you kind of alluded to, you saw some things too. See if it's the same. But so for me, I was like, it's hard for me to believe that there are people who just are out there that all they want is control and power.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, that's just hard for me. I mean, as a parent, as a manager of employees, I am very laissez-faire. Like, I believe in let people do things the way they want to do them, as long as we're heading towards the same goal. Like, I don't care how you get it done, as long as you get it done. Right. So I assume, like, I have no appetite for that kind of control or power. Like, I just don't.
Right. Absolutely.
I probably do somewhere in my life. I shouldn't say that, because that's also part of the report. It's like your shadow. So I'm sure I have it somewhere.
Yep.
But yeah, that was kind of the thing that I was missing, was like, is it about the money? Is it about, like, what is this all about? And then you start looking throughout history, and it really is, it really does seem to be about. I was listening to Joe Rogan podcast, a really good podcast. He had with the girl from North Korea who escaped North Korea. If you look throughout history, he mentioned this on his podcast. If you go out throughout history, most governments were dictatorships up until, America, either royalty or dictatorship, or, very concentrated.
Top down. Yeah, absolutely.
Until America came along. And then it kind of turned upside down, and now we've turned it right side back up, I guess. Or actually, I guess you could say we turned history right side up, and now it's back upside down.
True. Yeah.
So I think that's something that a lot of people who don't believe that some of this stuff could be true, because this was true for me, is you can't see yourself wanting to do that to other people. So it must not be true.
Right. Yep.
And that's a dangerous place to be, because, it basically makes you somewhat naive to what's actually going on. Did you see something similar?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the thing about it, you see it, it's not one of these, because this is not a left or right, because we see it so prevalent on both sides today. So it's something that's being used constantly. I feel like there is there is an end game, by some people at certain higher levels. And I think that there is, you get back to what are the basic wants or the basic needs, as you move up the chain, in the hierarchy chain, so, obviously you go through different stages throughout your life. First is, you want to make a good income, be a good provider. You want to reach security. Once you get beyond security, then you want power, right? Then you get to a certain level where you reach a pinnacle of a certain amount of money. I always think about the show Breaking Bad. He started out, I don't know if you've ever watched the series, Sean, but he started out, his whole goal in that show was simply to make enough meth to make a certain amount of money that would provide for his family once he died, because he had cancer. So that was his goal. He had it down to the penny of just exactly how much he needed. But as that progressed, what happened? He started once he fulfilled that amount of money, he couldn't stop. Right.
Right.
because it became more than just, and there's a really, near the end of the series, what was the real striking thing is he goes, one of his final quotes near the end of the series as the show was closing out in the last season. He says, "I'm not in the meth business. I'm in the empire building business," right? Which he never considered in the beginning. That was never even part of his mindset. But guess what? That evolved as he got more. So yeah, there you go. Maslow's hierarchy.
So here's a picture of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And what occurred to me, like I've heard this 1,000 times, right? We've talked about it on the show: safety, love and belonging, esteem, self-actualization. Like everything's pretty colors. There's a guy climbing a mountain. He's smiling like this, but there's a dark side to every one of these.
Sure.
Right.
Exactly.
So there are people who will rob and kill for safety, for the basic needs. Right.
Right.
There are people who manipulate to get love and belonging. There are people who get a sense of self-esteem from controlling others. And there are people who self-actualize. And, this is what our Marvel villains are all about, right? They've climbed this on the dark side of the mountain. That'd be a great image, by the way. We should do a dark side of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Has anyone done that?
I'm sure they have.
Surely they have. If not, somebody needs to get on that. I may have to do it.
That's right.
But so if you think about this, like on the back side of this mountain that you can't see, there's a dark version of all of these.
Yeah.
And if we're not aware of that, then we can be taken by surprise when it happens. And we're not going to be prepared for it.
Absolutely. Because someone's self-actualization can be, depending on their motives, it can be completely different, right?
Yeah.
Their self-actualization may be for the better of the world, but their betterment of the world can mean something entirely than what our meaning of the betterment of the world is.
So let's talk about Marvel, right? With Thanos.
Yeah.
Right? He, in his eyes, he was doing the right thing.
That's right.
Right? If I get rid of half of everybody on the planet, then the world will be a better place. Yeah. Now, granted, there's some social stuff going on in that and things like that.
Sure.
But from a character standpoint, that was his self-actualization, was like, if I could be the guy, I'm willing to do this. Nobody else is willing to do it.
Right.
Now, that's somewhat noble. I think what's going on when we get into past world leaders and, things like that, it's much more just pure power. Like you were saying with Breaking Bad, it's much more like that. And that's, I think that's why that show was so successful, is because it showed that evolution and people could totally see it.
Absolutely.
They're like, well, yeah, I guess I could see how that would happen. Like,
just a simple science or chemistry teacher that goes from just wanting to take care of his family.
Yep.
And he progresses into this, mafia, or this mob boss, basically.
Yeah. And I think what's important to understand is a lot of these people they're not born going in that direction.
Yeah.
But it happens as they go and they do this and do that. And they're like, all of a sudden they're like, oh, this is actually easier than teaching chemistry.
Yeah.
And it feels kind of good to like be able to have this power over people. Like, I feel strong. I feel in control. I feel like I want to make sure my family never loses this. So let me create an empire.
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of this stuff is, in governments around the world, not just our government, like around the world. These leaders are like, this is a way to take care of my family for generations to come.
Yeah.
As long as we stay in control,
right,
my family line can have a great life forever.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter who they step on the way. At some point, that no longer becomes an issue. It's weird.
Yeah. And there's certain, people that, once you get to a certain level that I think there's a hubris, that comes with that says that, people that are every day, 9 to 5, Joe Lunch Bucket are not capable, they look down on the kind of lifestyle that they lead.
Yeah, you forget. Well, it's the old saying: you forget where you came from.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's easy to do. I mean, I'm not by any means like top 1% or anything like that, but I live a pretty nice lifestyle, and it's easy for me to forget the hometown I grew up in, and or it's hard for me. I mean, it's easy for me to forget that I used to live in a single wide trailer in Columbus, Mississippi. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I mean, it was a pretty ratty little trailer.
Yeah. But you can appreciate it from a standpoint now of just appreciating that, look where you come from. And, I'm just glad that I'm thankful where I am today. Right.
Yeah. But it's also easy to forget.
It is. It really is.
Yeah. It seems like a dream. It's like,
but it's so easy. Also, the flip side of that, like you said, I mean, we're all capable of looking down our nose at those, we point the finger at those people, and how they're causing problems. They're not, they're not cleaning up. We need an HOA because some of these people don't know how to take care of their lawns, and
there you go. Yeah.
They leave their truck, so we do it in a kind of a smaller level on our own by setting up these HOA powers, and, and cause that's what we have in our neighborhood. Like it's a homeowner, a homeowners association where you can't have this out in the yard and this and this and this. Everybody's got to abide by these simple rules to keep everything looking just right, because we can't trust people to, change the oil out on their driveway. That is not a good look.
Yeah. Or use red lava rock instead of brown mulch. Like, what's that about?
That's right.
That's ridiculous.
That's right.
These are second class. We're going to have the mulchers and the anti-mulchers.
That's right.
It's like, oh, you don't mulch, you put down rocks instead of mulch. Yes, they last forever, but mulch you have to do every year, but that's stupid.
That's right.
Looks better to have mulch.
That's right.
Right. So yeah, it's like that seed of judgment, that seed of superiority, it's in all of us.
Absolutely.
And if we don't recognize it in ourselves, it's hard to recognize in other people.
Yeah.
And that's when we can get taken. And that was a big part of the early part of the report, is like, we have this shadow self, that I think comes from Carl Jungian psychology, that there's this, if we don't see our darker selves, then we can't see it in other people, and they will take advantage of us.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what's been going on for the past.
Well, and I think that, if you don't recognize, you and I both come from a Christian background, right? And there's a understanding from a Christian standpoint that we come from we're all fallen, right?
Right.
We're all, no one is, and I think that helps sometimes ground us in our understanding when we go back to that understanding. You know what? There's a lot of grace that needs to go around because we're all kind of messed up. We're all broken people to some degree. Yeah. And so that helps it's kind of a check, it's like kind of a way to keep us in check that we have that. But I feel like, sometimes as people move up in their power scale or the levels in their, as they move up the chain, so to speak, sometimes they forget that, right? They forget, those things that kind of ground them because they feel like that, you can move above that. And power, I think power is, as the old saying, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, or something. What is I forgot the old saying.
You nailed it.
Power has this, it's an intoxicating thing that makes you forget a lot of where you came from. So,
and it's all through our literature. Like, this is not a new idea.
No.
But I keep coming back to, if you're a pretty decent person and you're just kind of doing your job, taking care of your family, building a business, you're going to forget that people like that exist in the world. And you're like, surely they're not trying to take over the world, or surely they're not trying to there's no way that there's a big end game, and I've said that myself. There's why would that be? No, because we don't see ourselves doing that.
Yeah,
we don't see ourselves capable of that, so we miss it that other people might be that way.
Right.
And it is a form of being naive about what we're capable of, and it's like people who think they can't imagine rape and murder and all those things, but if you realize that, I mean, go back to your example, biblically, like King David, ends up having an affair with his best friend's wife while he's out at battle, and then kills the dude.
Yeah.
So he doesn't find out. I mean, and here's the guy who's like, written all the, most of the Psalms and all this stuff. It's like we're all capable, and that's one of the great things about, I think, the literature of the Bible. If you look at it from a stories and things like that, is that it's not a bunch of perfect characters.
It's messy, extremely very messy.
And it's one of the things that people who don't understand Christianity dismiss about it, but it's actually one of the beauties of it is how messy it is.
Absolutely. A lot of killing, a lot of...
Because it's real life.
Yeah. A lot of betrayal, a lot of... it's really
I don't
there
think
because it goes...
I don't think we talk about that enough in church either.
No, we don't. Yeah, absolutely.
We
David,
talk about...
like you just said, David, a man after God's own heart. And, we're thinking, what? Guy had, like you said, had dude killed, took his wife, I mean, what? You're thinking, but
it's like that's like a episode of, your favorite soap opera. Just pick one, all of them, or your crime show or anything else. Like it's just, so I think the whole kind of point of a lot of this is that if you're not aware that this can happen, and if you don't believe that it can happen, you'll miss it. Because you won't believe that an end game could be just pure power.
Sure.
And that's what throughout history it proves that that's exactly what it is. It's a power play.
And let's go back to real quick. Let's go back to the Hegelian dialectic, which is, again, like you said, first of all, you create the problem.
Yep.
The antithesis, you watch the reaction, you watch the fear that comes out of it. COVID-19, whatever your position, obviously people have a fear, panic, outrage. That's going on. You can look at all of the big topics, either right or left, that have been going on recently, whether it's systemic racism. There's another problem that's created.
Yep.
Then on the other side, there's critical race. What is this? There's a problem. We got to fight that. We got to fight all the, the school. We don't know how prevalent that is. It could be a problem. Who knows? But so everything, out of everything, it's almost like you're fanning the flame to a problem.
Yeah, the thing is, like, the solution that some people are fighting. So let's take, I don't know what word is safe anymore, because I'm sure YouTube and Facebook knows all the slang terms for the vaccine.
Yeah.
So let's just take, there's a virus. Let's say it's a real virus. None of us discount that. But let's say it was engineered or released, or however you want to look at it, right? To create a problem. So the solution might be that the people would clamor for is a cure.
Absolutely.
For that. So you throw that out there. Well, then one side is going to fight against that because now it's mandatory. But if that's not the end game, that would be what we would consider the antithesis.
Yeah.
When the real end game is the passports and the tracking. So they can keep an eye on you around the clock, which I know sounds completely conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
But, and then you're like, well, to what end is that? Well, if you keep following it down the road, and this is where people are going to either tune out or be all in with us. We'll probably split our crowd on this on this episode.
That's right.
But if you look at how, for instance, China develop how they control their economy is through social credit.
Yeah.
And if you can digitize someone's life, you can turn on their ability to do commerce. You can turn it off and on by behavior.
Sure.
So a lot of people think that's the end game, is to be able to turn that on and off and basically make you a slave to the system.
Well, I think that happens here sometimes.
I think it happens. I think that's absolutely what I've been saying for years. A lot of, and like when people bring up slavery, like, have you looked at most corporations? Like, and I know some people will be like, that's not the same as slavery. Like, I understand you're not getting, like, there's a lot of differences and there's a lot of similarities to corporate living in a cubicle, working 40, 50, 60 hours. They get to choose when you can take breaks, when you can't take breaks. Like, there's a lot of similarities. It's not, I could say the emotion is some of the emotional abuse is there, maybe not the physical abuse. Obviously you get a salary, you get those kind of things. So it's different. I totally get it. Send the hate mail to Jonathan, not to me. But like, it's one thing in a one of the videos that was in the report talked about, if you look throughout history, the most prosperous business model in the history of the world is slavery.
Yeah.
If you want to be a controlling power, the thing to do is to be a slave owner. Rome, like, you can go back as far as you want, Babylonians, Persians, any continent, any time of throughout history, there have been slaves, and the people in power had a slave organization working for them.
Sure.
And that feels really uncomfortable to say. And we don't like that, but that's where this usually ends up.
Yeah. Yeah. It does.
And that's like, people don't want to go there. I totally get that. And I didn't either. Like, I didn't want to go there either.
Yeah.
So it's like, I was like, really? Do people would want that? Like, I don't want that. But
there are people that do. Security is a nice feeling to have for a lot of people, regardless of the consequences.
Yeah. So if you can control, and one way to do that is, you can digitize everything so that there can be no underground economy.
Yeah.
Because that's been the problem up to this point in history about slavery, is that people can escape it. Eventually they can escape it and create an underground economy and do other things, because it was harder to track. You could hide, you could do those things. If you can get everybody tracked digitally, nobody can hide.
Right.
So it's crazy, but that's where we're at.
Yep.
So and a big part of this is something else we alluded to at the top of the show, which was an old naval trick where if you're out on the sea, because all the ships look the same, back in the day, right? They were all clipper ships. They all kind of look the same. So they would fly the wrong flag. We would also call it a false flag, right? So they would fly that so they could get closer into battle.
Sure.
Before they started firing on the other ships.
Yeah.
So it's just a form of deception. So when you hear that term, a not true flag, like when you hear that term, that's what they're talking about. It's a way to kind of take your eyes off of what's really going on, just long enough for the attack to happen.
Yeah.
And that's a classic military.
Deception is always part of war. Yeah.
Sun Tzu, right?
Yeah. Sun Tzu, man. Absolutely. Make your enemy think something when, you don't want them to know what's actually going on, obviously. I mean, that's just stating the obvious, but make him think he's superior when he's not, right?
Yep.
It's exactly the position you want to be in.
Yeah. I think that's where both sides need to be very careful. When you think you're getting what you want, you may not be. So one thing Joe Rogan said, he's like, he's like, I'm really confused. And Joe Rogan's pretty down the middle, I think, on a lot of
absolutely. Yeah.
So he's like, I'm really confused by the left, and they're doing all this censorship, and they want to do this censorship, especially when they were the voice of like freedom, 30 years ago. But now they're into censorship. He's like, I don't understand how they can't see that when everything moves back far right, which it will eventually.
Yeah, it's
the
a pendulum.
censorship is going to flip.
Yep.
And the fact that people can't see that and they get caught up, he kept saying this over and over, like people are more concerned about their side winning than they are about right and wrong.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a dangerous place to be. And that's on both sides. I don't care if
Absolutely.
you're on the right or left. We've
That's
got
right.
some people on the right that are definitely digging in the wrong places, I think, and going against the left when they should be going against the establishment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because the whole goal is,
divide and conquer.
Exactly right. Your whole goal is to win instead of really realizing what's going on and what's happening.
Yeah, you're fighting the wrong enemy.
Yeah.
Yep. You know, it's like what was a classic Bible story? Was it Daniel that they surrounded the camp with like 30 warriors, surrounded the camp and then like lit fires and made lots of noise, and then the camp killed each other? Yeah. You remember that story? Was that Daniel? Or was that?
I don't think that was Daniel.
What was it? It was one of the D's.
Yeah.
I can't remember. But anyway, somebody could tell me who it is. But anyway, that kind of deception is what's going on. And it's divide and conquer. Like, let's get these people to fight against each other. Meanwhile, we'll be over here orchestrating this stuff over here.
Yeah.
You know, it's classic illusionist stuff. If you've ever been to a illusion show in Vegas or Branson or Gatlinburg, like David Copperfield type stuff, like, it's not magic. It's just sleight of hand and misdirection, but man, it's hard to figure out how they're doing it.
Yeah.
Until you were to go stand on the side of the stage and watch from the side of the stage, you could absolutely see everything they're doing.
Sure.
But from the audience, you can't tell.
Nope.
So the last thing was just kind of remind people of the fear response. So where was that? I don't remember what that was, but so basically, here's what happens when we fear. We kind of talked about this with JW on the last show, but when you are in a state of fear, literally a good 60-70% of your brain goes offline.
Sure.
Like, you literally cannot use the prefrontal cortex. You cannot use the reasoning, long-term thinking part of your brain when you're in a state of fear.
Nope.
So you have to be able to
put yourself in this situation from a simple standpoint. Think of like just something simple in everyday life. Like, you get fired from a job, right? So, the rational response is, when you have a job, is to say, you know what? It's not the end of the world. There's plenty of opportunity out there, right? And then what happens if you get fired or something happens where your job is completely eliminated?
You just freak out.
Yeah. The fear kicks in and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So how did you go from, like being the guy that's like completely confident you were in the driver's seat in your career to all of a sudden something happens and you lose your job and all of a sudden you feel like, you see how that flips? I mean, it's so psychological.
Yeah. And there's a good reason for it. I mean, the reason for it is that energy, because your brain, a fully functioning brain, takes 30% of your body's calories and energy every day.
Yep.
Right. So for the creative process, for long-term thinking, for all the things that goes on. Well, that energy needs to get redirected. If you're in a state of fear, you got to either fight or flight, right?
Yeah.
So that energy gets redirected to the blood flow, literally gets redirected to muscles, circulation of the blood, all that kind of stuff. And the problem is, we're now living in a state of chronic fear. Like, people always talk about the saber-toothed tiger and that kind of stuff, but that was like a once in a month event, maybe, if you think back to, or even, you go back a couple hundred years, a big fear-inducing event might happen once a week or something like that. Now we've got this chronic fear 24/7.
Absolutely.
So our bodies can never quite recover, and we're never quite using all of our brain unless we're doing some very intentional things to reduce fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it makes us more susceptible to all this stuff we're talking about.
Sure.
And just like you just said, we can be very logical about it on this show or
Mm-hmm.
listening to the show. You can be like, oh, I could never fall for that.
Mm-hmm.
Until you start getting scared in different areas. You start wondering, like, you start getting agitated, which is just a form of fear. Then all of a sudden
It's
you're not
like,
thinking critically.
picture it, you're flying in this air, you're flying in the comfortably up in the sky in the airplane. All of a sudden there's a hole that just blows out in the side of the plane and it's sucking all the air out, and you're like, all of a sudden the panic just drops down, the mass drop down, and you're totally, everything in your whole world changes, right?
Right.
That article you were reading on the plane, totally, you forget. That's not even important.
Yeah, I mean, when they're doing the safety briefing, right? You're like, yeah, the exits are back.
Whatever.
I know where the exit is. But yeah, when all of a sudden the plane's crashed, would you even remember where the exit is? If you're not trained, and if you haven't trained yourself,
that's right.
And that's one thing exercise is great for. It trains your body to be able to perform during stress. It's like if you do CrossFit or any other hard exercise, and you get that, like, if you're really doing a hard workout, we used to call it WOD drunk, because you're like walking around the box and you're like kind of half there.
Yeah.
Because you've put so much energy into your muscles and your blood that, like, literally your brain is not fully functioning.
Yeah.
And until you train for that, and that's why special forces and military, that's why they train for these situations, so that you can learn to still think. I mean, were you did you go to Ranger school?
No.
Okay. So you just did the recon stuff.
Yeah.
That's what they do in Ranger school, right? They push you to your physical limits and then ask you to do math and crazy stuff. Like,
that's right.
And people can't do it. Like, it's just your brain is shut off either from,
Absolutely.
And we're already a sleep deprived society. We're overweight. We've got chronic stress about work and about the changing jobs. We've got notifications pinging us nonstop. Like, all these things are just make us more susceptible to all of these classic tools that people have used throughout history. It's just now they work even better and even faster.
Sure.
So you've really got to be on the lookout, because you're always being persuaded by somebody.
No doubt.
So
I'm curious, what is, because you mentioned at the beginning of the show, what are some of his, recommendations, in terms of, because I haven't gotten that far in reading. I think I've gotten to like number 3 there, or section 3.
Yep.
And,
so some of this stuff, a lot of our entrepreneur, solopreneur listeners, a lot of them know a lot of this stuff. I think it's just a good reminder. But, and I think a lot of people who are successful will echo some of these things. One is, so this is going to be, there's 2 different areas here. There's really just kind of good life practices, and I think then there's other specific to what's going on now. So one thing he talks about is stop banking at big national banks that are funding a lot of the politicians' campaigns, a lot of the, those kinds of things. Try to go back to, and this is hard to do, right? Because we're both Amazon. Everybody loves Amazon. It's so easy. But, try to go back to using local establishments as much as possible. Right.
Yeah.
Avoid national supermarkets, go to local supermarkets. There's certain tech platforms who are not as friendly as others, figure out which ones could you substitute, right?
Yeah.
So you get away from, Marky Z and the Facebook bunch and go to, whatever else you might want to use.
By the way, Rumble has just recently launched a live platform. So I'm hoping that, StreamYard will be able to incorporate that. I know they stopped, obviously, Periscope. Twitter no longer does Periscope. So I think hopefully they might be incorporating Rumble here shortly.
Cool.
That we can have a Rumble channel.
Rumble. I like
Rumble.
that. I've never used Rumble. I'll have to get an account.
Yeah.
So another one is to stop listening to mainstream news.
Mm-hmm.
That would probably be just
help.
a good idea anyway. And again, either side, like, I guess, yeah. I mean, it's both. News has pretty much become propaganda at this point on both sides.
It really has. I mean, if you,
it's entertainment. I mean, we've said that before. Like, it is. Fox News has become an entertainment channel, just like everything.
It's an opinion. Yeah, it's all opinion channel.
Absolutely.
CNN's opinion, Fox News' opinion, for the most part.
Yeah.
All of the news sites are opinion based. I mean, I used to love going to Drudge just for the headlines, and Drudge has kind of changed over the years. They're not the same that they used to be.
Yeah.
They're kind of, I think they used to be more, probably more right leaning, and now it's kind of, it feels like more middle of the road now. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that's probably to appease whatever advertisers are
absolutely
spending the most money.
Right.
Got to get that demographic, and that's a lot of this happens. That's what corrupts is a lot of times the money.
The money, follow the money, man.
Yeah,
that's one thing my father-in-law always said. He's an accountant, and everything that he attributes in the world, that's one of his taglines is follow the money, right?
And it doesn't mean the money is bad, but it definitely has a lot of power if you're not fully aware of it and you're not taking care of your mental health around it. So I'm not here to say money's bad. I think it's a very valuable tool.
Yeah. But people can be corrupted easily.
Very easily. Yeah. You see it in
that's what we were talking about earlier. We're all susceptible.
And you see it throughout history, and you see it in every country in the world. Like, it's not a new thing.
Yeah.
And then allowing the full tracking and aggregation of your data. So, slow down some of the tracking when it asks. But another thing would be to use something like CyberGhost or those types of browsers that don't track you.
Right.
Things like that is what he's talking about. So those are some things that are just more like real in the world stuff. And then some of the other things are like, just start becoming more self-sufficient. And even, as crazy as this sounds, there's some truth to preppers.
Yeah.
I don't know if you need 2 years in a bomb shelter buried in the middle of the Appalachians.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you have the time and the money to do that, it certainly wouldn't hurt. But even we saw this here in Texas this winter, right? Having a week's worth of food on hand that you can eat without having to cook it.
Absolutely.
I mean, there were people that literally couldn't get to stores, couldn't get out of their house, didn't have heat.
Having a generator, that certainly helped, right?
Having a generator, having solar, solar has come down in price, and there's, for a lot of parts of the country, there's no reason you couldn't have solar. Learning to can, learning to hunt, or have a friend that hunts that you can maybe do something else for them, and they can give you, part of their catch, those kinds of things. Because, if you really wanted to, like I said, we've seen it happen here in Texas for a week with the power grid went down for almost a week. If you couldn't go shopping, or, the truckers go on strike, and maybe they're going on strike for the right reasons. Right. But if the truckers go on, most people don't realize that there's less than 36 hours of food in the average grocery store. And the bigger the city, the less there is.
Sure.
Like, there's probably 12 to 14 hours of food on the shelves.
Yeah.
Because, if you ever been to a 24-hour market in the middle of the night, you see the aisles are full of pallets where they're restocking the shelves.
Yep.
And that truck comes in every night, every night. And if it misses 2 nights, 3 nights, the shelves are almost picked clean.
That's right.
So if you don't have, some meals that, canned goods, I don't care if it's SpaghettiOs, like, have a week of SpaghettiOs for everybody in the family. Like, it doesn't have to be, full blown MREs or, actual rations or anything like that.
Freeze dried.
Twinkies, man. Twinkies last forever. Get some Twinkies. Yeah, but the average home has less than a week of food on hand, and a lot of that is perishable.
Yeah.
So you want, some less perishable food. Like you said, a backup generator, and because in civil rest, all these kinds of things, all this stuff can change on a dime, right?
Absolutely.
Water, all these things.
Yeah.
Learn some basic survival skills.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're staying at your house, if you live within, a lot of us live in the suburbs, so you could get out and forage if you really had to.
Yeah.
But you got to know what to do and what to look for.
Yep. Exactly.
So just those kinds of things. Educate yourself on what you see. Like really try to the side effect of using like one of the browsers that don't track you is you actually get better information when you do internet searches, because you're not going to be retargeted down to the same type of stuff you're looking at. And in fact, a lot of guys I know that do copywriting, they'll use those just so they can get better. Sometimes you want to go down a road when you're researching copy, and sometimes you want to see both sides of an argument so that you can overcome it in your copy. So those are some of the things. Think about how you're going to preserve your wealth. Can you pay off your home? Do you have some land?
Yeah.
Maybe, if you've got 3 or 4 brothers and sisters, could you all go together and buy a piece of land somewhere that's a day's drive away?
Yeah.
If you really had to. And these are they sound crazy, but at the same time, you got a little nice vacation spot. If nothing happens, if something does happen, you've got a place to go.
Yeah.
So
10 years, it's amazing what time will do, because 10 years ago, this would have sounded like cuckoo, right?
Yeah. And to some people, it still does.
It does, but it's less,
it's far less now for sure.
It's far less. And I think it will continue to be that way where, conspiracy people, whatever you want to say, like preppers, like you said, preppers. I've used to live. In fact, my office, is right next to this is out in the county. Sean, you've been up here to my office. There's a guy that lives up in the top of the cul-de-sac right next to my office. That's a prepper. And he owns like the 50 acres of land behind my office.
Yeah.
Great guy. And, he lets me hunt on the land. He said, yeah, you can hunt anytime you want to. I put, a couple of deer stands back there. He said, as long as you bring me some meat, if you, share some of it.
Yeah.
And, but super guy, he's probably a little further out there than I would ever be, but super nice guy. But he is completely, he's prepper, but I mean, totally one thing prepared though. I mean,
and one thing I would add that I know you do is you need to be able to walk with a load. Like I ruck, and I'm up to like 45 pounds, 5 miles for 45 pounds. I know you hike with a pack.
Yep.
But that is a skill that I think most people think they could walk. If they had to walk all day, they could. It ain't that easy.
No, it's not.
Like walking is for long distance for hours is much harder than people give it credit for. How quickly you can get blisters, which then make you basically immobile, is shocking. Like, when I did a couple of years ago, I did that ruck out in Seattle. It was 60 miles in 20 hours. I think we started with 85 people and only 30 finished. And the number one reason was blisters and knee problems and other stuff.
Yep.
And there is no way to prepare for that other than to go out and walk. Like you have to get time on feet, as we used to say in the military.
Absolutely.
It's like,
and even if you have time on your feet, you get blisters. Like, I mean, we get like packets of moleskin, what we call it, moleskin, you know, just slap that stuff on.
Yeah. But the more you do it, the less,
exactly.
The longer it takes to get that.
Absolutely.
So being able to walk with the load, I think, is an underutilized skill in this country. And that's actually the star course with GoRuck. That's what it's based on, is I think both Roosevelt and Kennedy issued like every man should be able to walk 50 miles in 24 hours.
Sure.
And I would bet the majority of our population cannot do that.
Oh, that's an easy one right there. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's, and it's probably not going to be in the best weather either when you have to do it.
No,
if things ever get that bad. So,
right.
So I know this has been a little bit of a diversion, but I think it fits in with, if we're all about persuasion, we need to understand. It's not just about persuading; it's also about being persuaded, and that's kind of where this episode's gone. So, and I think a lot of our listeners are savvy enough to know about some of this stuff, but it's still easy to get caught up in it, for sure.
Key takeaway, I would say, if you've go back and like we talked about the Hegelian dialectic.
Yeah.
Understand that and just think about that. And then once you learn that, just apply it to what you've seen in, throughout, the last 10 years or so, even beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
And think about, how that's being used to coerce, people to, do things that, typically they wouldn't be.
Well, I mean, and you could even say something like, and I don't know if it's true, but let me give you just one more example as we go that's not as charged, right? So, let's say I want to get a lot of people to owe me money, right?
Sure.
So they're paying me interest, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So what might I do? Well, I could encourage people to take out loans to pay for their college education. So how would I do that? Well, I would incentivize universities to raise their rates and let me finance.
Yeah.
You raise tuition, whatever you need to raise it, we'll cover it. We'll guarantee the loan. We'll give the people we'll give the students an out, a way to fund college. Right. So you put out this problem that college is getting expensive. The government comes in and saves the day. We'll guarantee your loans.
Yeah.
Right. So this sounds like the solution, but the real end game is, hey, now we have you for life as a debtor.
Yep. Exactly.
And you cannot erase the debt.
Nope.
Even through bankruptcy. Even in bankruptcy.
Nope. It's with you for the rest of your life until it's paid off. So there's no getting out of that one.
So there's so like where else have we seen it? That's the kind of questions you can start asking. Then if you start playing that game, like could this be? Like even if it's not, at least you'll train your brain to start looking for it.
Sure. Absolutely.
All right.
Well, good stuff. Yeah, I mean that's a lot to digest.
We just dropped a bunch on people right there.
But that's good. We don't want to sugarcoat things,
Yeah.
You got to think about these things sometimes. I think we can, Sean, could we post a link to that report?
I don't know if we can post a link. I think
where they can access it. No.
He said don't put it on social medias. I mean, I guess it's on our website, but
okay. Would our website be considered social media?
Probably not.
Okay.
Well, we do need to put a disclaimer not to share it on social media.
Okay. Yeah, we won't share it on social media, but we'll share it here on a podcast.
Yeah.
It's called The Worldwide Shadow.
Yeah. So, and the reason is not that it's incorrect or anything, is that this is the type of stuff that tends to get shut down and deleted off the internet.
Yep. Easily.
So we have to be careful about where it's shared for sure. So keep that in mind.
Well, I got to say, I did tap into my little reservoir.
I saw that
of Tin Cup, and it is very smooth.
Nice.
So let me see if I can. I want to give them some credit since I'm having a little. But I had the little label somewhere around here, but I think I must have dropped it. Let's see. So let me give them props on here. Really smooth. It's called Tin Cup 10 cup American whiskey. And you ever had that, Sean?
I have not.
I don't even know because they don't put it on their bottle, which is kind of unusual. Let's see. Here we go. 10 cup whiskey. You can find them over at 10cupwhiskey.com.
Easy enough. 10 is in TIN, right?
Yep.
Because it comes with a little tin cup, which is probably actually aluminum, not tin, because I don't know if
yeah, I think you're right
anymore.
It says 10 Cup is a classic American whiskey. It has a bourbon style profile with a bold, spicy finish. It's a cut to proof with what we believe is the best water in the world, directly from the Rockies. So yeah, you can go read about it. I'll post a link, but it is, let's see, I'm trying to get to what the percentage of alcohol.
It's probably 45%, probably 25 to 45.
Probably so. I think it's probably, I think it's 90. Yeah, it's 90.
So 40. Yeah, so 45%.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
So hey, here's some trivia as we head out, right? Because I was thinking like 10 cup versus aluminum. Is there a difference?
10 versus aluminum.
Yeah, you're in the composites world. Let's see how good you're.
Well, composites, that's not metal.
I know, but it's chemistry stuff.
Let's see, tin versus aluminum. So
it's a good bar trivia right here.
Aluminum. So let's see. So I'm thinking that it's aluminum, but it's something added to aluminum to make the tin. Is that right?
That is incorrect.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Tin is rarely found on Earth, as it is the 49th most abundant metal, whereas aluminum is the 3rd most abundant metal.
Okay.
And the 9th most abundant metal element on Earth, found almost everywhere. Aluminum
makes sense.
So atomic number of 10 is 50, and aluminum 13. So yeah, yeah, 10 is much older, but it's much more scarce apparently. So there you go.
Well, I think unless they're lying, this is nothing but propaganda, this is a tin cup.
Yeah. Which is funny because it says tin is cheaper than aluminum. But aluminum is replacing tin. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Aluminum is stronger. That's why.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So I can vouch for that because a lot of die casters in the engine parts industry, they use aluminum parts.
Yeah.
For your engines. So it's pretty strong and it's lightweight. That's the other reason. Lightweight, but strong. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you have it. There's your trivia for the day.
There's your trivia.
Tin versus aluminum.
Well, thanks guys for listening. Sean, we'll break this into 2 episodes. Right. And yeah, it's been interesting. It's been an interesting dive into propaganda.
Yeah.
Hope you find it interesting. We'll have to revisit some of this in some future episodes, but hope everyone has a great weekend coming up. Again, you can find us on all of your podcast platforms, Stitcher Radio, iHeart, Spotify. You can also find us at persuasionbythepint.com. And you can find us on our YouTube channel at persuasionbythepint.com. You can see Sean's fancy looking new setup on screen.
So cool.
Guys, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
All right. That's awesome. You got to send me a link to that.
Yeah.